A very good afternoon from Singapore. My name is Corrado. I'm the Managing Director at Paya Consulting, and together with the Snowfox, CarbonFox team, we are very, very pleased and honored to bring to you today's webinar around demystifying supply chain emissions. I will let the team that will be with you for the next hour introduce itself next. Starting with Ville-Veikko.
Yeah, my name is Ville-Veikko Laukkanen, the CEO of Snowfox company. Been doing that for a little bit more than 3 years, and really happy to work on a really concrete cases together with the Paya team, Corrado and Kevin, as for today. And really happy to be online and share the insights and actions that we've been planning together in between our teams. Hanna, please.
Good morning and afternoon to all participants. Great having you here. My name is Hanna Kuusela, also from Snowfox. I'm responsible for developing our CarbonFox approach further. We will talk about that later today. I myself have background both in sustainability consulting, but also in financial controlling and accounting, which gives sort of a nice touch for what we are doing with CarbonFox. And it's great being here with Corrado and Kevin. Corrado, would you like to continue from here?
Sure. Thank you, Ville-Veikko. Thank you, Hanna. My name is Corrado Forcellati. I'm with Paya Consulting since last year, before KPMG Singapore, and prior to my advisory work within the sustainability field, I was in charge of Nordea's activities in China first, and then in Singapore for Southeast Asia. Very, very pleased, very honored to see this happening. After Kevin, I will give you the welcoming words and also share a little bit more why Snowfox and Paya are bringing this webinar together. Kevin?
Hi. Thanks, Corrado. Thanks, Ville-Veikko, and thanks, Hanna. My name is Kevin. I'm a consultant at Paya Consulting. I also serve as the carbon specialist. So I work together with Hanna and Ville-Veikko and CarbonFox team to implement CarbonFox's solution, but also really being a sustainability consultant to companies here in Southeast Asia. So it's great to see you all, and hopefully you guys learn more about Scope 3 and the approach that our team has taken to demystifying Scope 3 emissions for our clients. Back to you, Corrado.
Thank you. So without any further ado, if you go to the next slide, we have the agenda for today. So I will start welcoming you and giving you some context around why we are here today and what you can expect. And then with Hanna and Kevin, we will really take a deep dive into emissions insights by using artificial intelligence, and also how we can actually bring those insights together into strategies that can be actually used to reduce the emissions along a value chain. We are planning to spend an hour. There will be plenty of time for Q&A. I'm sure there will be quite engaging questions and comments from you. You are muted throughout the webinar. GoToWebinar is not allowing you to unmute, unfortunately. So I can only encourage you to bring your questions and comments into the question or the chat that you have access to. So if I should give you some welcoming word next, Hanna, I think so Paya is a sustainability consultancy firm, and I will describe it and give you a little bit more about Paya after the welcoming words. But as we have been working with a variety of clients, private and public, in Singapore and Southeast Asia, you can imagine that when we are thinking about supply chains, of course, this part of the world is increasingly having suppliers that will play a part in any company's decarbonization roadmap. So as we were trying to understand and get better insight and knowledge around how do we best actually demystify value chain, that's where we met Snowfox and CarbonFox in particular as an AI solution. And I'm also happy to share with all of you today that CarbonFox and Paya have formalized a collaboration as part of this journey. And today's webinar is really a sharing of some of the work that we are presently actually doing on the ground. We have a client that we won together, is a retailer in Asia, committing to SBTi. And it's very interesting because with Hanna and Kevin, you will also get an appreciation of how the AI can enable and help and enrich, but also how the role of the advisor on the ground is still complementarity. And I think the whole complementarity is what Ville-Veikko and myself, we saw as we were embarking into this collaboration between the two companies. So I'm very, very pleased to welcoming you to today's session. Again, I can only encourage you to bring your insights, comments, questions. We need use cases. We need to be challenged on some of our thinking. I think this is also part of the whole journey in demystifying. But really, the takeaway for today, hopefully, at least two. The first one is really that in this journey of data and transparency, we need to get started, and AI provides actually a very good start for us to gain insights in order to develop the strategies. And number two is really this is a journey. It's not it's not a destination. So having a solution that will be enabling us to enrich as we're moving along by engaging suppliers is also allowing us to actually have a much better understanding of the emissions within a supply chain. So to Paya, if we go next, Hanna. Paya is celebrating 20 years of work in Singapore. We are headquartered in Singapore. We have been working with sustainability, really embedding sustainability in business operation and strategies over the last 20 years for private and public companies and government agencies. And it has been quite an interesting journey on the whole way. And of course, that journey has accelerated dramatically about 2 years ago, where the whole sustainability is now mainstream. And that has also meant that the Paya, having a team of technical adapted but also passionate people around sustainability, have been able to provide insights to companies by one, working with strategy, and two, also really helping companies assessing their greenhouse gas emissions. And we have performed, as you can see, over 100 carbon assessments so far. We are recognized as a knowledge partner for many institutions in Singapore and in the region. And we are continuously also trying to work and strive to adopt technology, as we're doing now together with Snowfox, in really enabling sustainability. So, Ville-Veikko.
Yeah, thank you, Corrado, and I'm really happy to cooperate with you. I think we share the passion to really solve a problem of a scale here, say I'm in the scope 3. Well, Snowfox is a company that is a tech company. I think the use case is where we have relevant data, enough data of complexity to be solved. That is the core, where we use AI techniques and always with the aim to really kind of provide actionable insights to lead the companies to something more. As said, I mean, we've been operating around about 3 years. Today we have about 70 plus 80 customers, all of large-scale customers, international customers. We started from an area where there is clearly structured data. I mean, accounts payable process, invoice automation, routing, posting for large-scale companies with a lot of complexity in place. In a very short time, objectively, we've been able to raise the automation levels to 90% from around about 20%. Our customers are, for example, the Finnish state and Finland after a public tender, so really objectively won that case. And what we practically do, because we want to be super practical, and as we are demystifying the supply chain, we also want to demystify what is AI actually, and what is it all about data, and really using this at the scale. So we reinvented in a way, as we have the super competencies in the invoice field. I mean, tracking really detailed information about the invoices. And I think there, on a global base, there are 280 billion invoices, a lot to be done, which are converting from manual invoices, I mean papers, to PDF and to more digital formats. And we realized by having the competencies with our clientele that actually in an invoice there is a very detailed information about the suppliers, what companies are buying, quantities, logistics, energy, and so on. And that increases all the time. So taking the complexity of the area, I mean scope 3, where the emissions truly lie, there is something to be done directly from the data, utilizing AI techniques and building that into actionable insight for the companies to really lead. And who we truly want to attract, of course, all the companies, because you have a big impact on this question. But I mean, some companies have already identified that they want to build this as a competitive advantage, not only to fill in the reporting needs, but really to have it objectively on plate and take the company truly to the level where the net zero can be reached in steps. So what we are about is a tech company, data, algo, actions, and really cooperating with the skills that you have in Paya to build added value for you customers. So this would be my opening words and an introduction in short what Snowfox AI is about.
Thank you, Ville-Veikko. And so before going really into the practical work on combining technology and the advisory work, I just want to set a little bit the scene for the next 45 minutes. So Hanna, if you go to the next slide, this is a framework that I hope can make sense about how we are approaching the whole sustainable supply chain. And bear with us, we will be using supply chain and value chain a bit interchangeable today. But if you're looking at the bottom left quadrant where we have today internal, that's where we are right now. It's all about credibility. For companies, to Ville-Veikko's point about the net zero, you need to start somewhere. And I think when we start looking at value chain, we also start feeling that daunting exercise about not only asking suppliers to provide data, but also accepting the fact that a lot of the data that we will be receiving from supplier, if at all, is actually taking at face value. So how do we build that credibility so that we can get started? And that brings us then to the insights. And I think this is where at least CarbonFox, Snowfox, Paya, they see the complementarity, because as we are looking into data for credibility, we are also getting actionable insights from it. And hopefully during the webinar, you will also be able to appreciate the fact by listening to Hanna and Kevin, how these insights are actually being generated for a concrete case, the one that we are working with in Asia. And then once you have actionable insights and you have your credibility in place, you can truly start transforming, because a lot of the thing we start seeing on the ground is that there is no perfect solution to value chain emissions. You will have to proxy, there will be averages, there will be spend-based. There are many different methodologies. But one thing is for sure, you need to start building your credibility on data points that cannot be disputed. And they are mainly financial data. They are mainly data that are actually resulting from activities that are already captured in your ledger, in your balance sheet. And in order for you to really spark the transformation, you need to have a repository or better, an AI that is helping you enriching the data by really learning as you go, because that's really where I think the power of the AI is to enable that transformation by enriching the data as you move along, as you transform. And that is truly important, because as you transform, you're also creating engagement. And I think in particular, Paya is seeing that this is really where the insights, the fact that we have a better credibility, the fact that we have hotspots that we can continuously enrich, is allowing us actually to come up with targeted strategies. So rather than looking at the whole supplier chain as a whole, we really can start looking at it in a much more targeted way, because now we have data, we have credibility, we have insights that can be actionable. We know how to enrich the data by also engaging our supplier. So I think if you are thinking about demystifying value chain, what we are really looking at is that instead of following the flows, now it's all about understanding the data and the flows, and that is what the webinar today is about. So without any further ado, I will pass it to Hanna to kick off the webinar, and I will then be moderating the Q&A towards the end of the session. Hanna, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Corrado. It's amazing working with Paya's people. I mean, it's so inspiring, hearing about and seeing about what really is, happening in the world. It's not only the stagnatic historical point of view, what we are really looking into the future. And what I'll be sharing with you now today is that how we can really, I'm going to be now focusing on really practical terms, that how we can use these AI technologies that Ville-Veikko was talking about to really help us gaining those insights into the supply chain, into the value chain, where, as said, the biggest impacts typically occur. So it's outside of the immediate company borders. I will start off with a bit of more setting the scene. I mean that where did it originate from? The fact that we started looking into the opportunity of building on top of the purchase invoice data at Snowfox. So I mean the big question is, we hear constantly news about the global greenhouse gas emissions continuing to be on a steep rise. I mean, even with the COVID pandemic, there was only a minor sort of take back on the global emissions, but now they are again projected to be at the new high world record level. And really, national targets, all kinds of international and even national initiatives, companies are targeting, having their net zero targets. So where does this come from? I mean, there's a huge need for us to be able to decrease the emissions, and yet we don't see the impact. And what we are, as I said in the introduction, I have background in sustainability consulting. I've been working with, the biggest companies in Finland around these themes. And now with Snowfox and in developing CarbonFox, we have been discussing on the market, what sort of things are causing this the lack of these actions that really make the impact. And what we have summarized here as a top 3, I'd actually like our participants now in the webinar, to challenge these a bit. You are seeing in your daily lives probably some different issues. So please, I'd like to see you comment on those if you sort of feel that these are not the top 3, and if there's something else that you really like to add. But what we've seen is that it really comes down to the lack of data. One first thing, as said, companies are starting to be quite good at looking at their own direct impact. When we talk about the sort of the greenhouse gas protocol aligned scopes, we are talking about the scopes 1 and 2. So the direct energy and the indirect energy consumption and the impact thereof. And of course, yeah, it makes sense. It's the easiest place to start with because you have the direct control over what you purchase there. You can see and really select if there's available opportunities, of course. But I mean, then looking at the bigger picture, we see that in most industries, 70 to even 90% of the total footprint and the climate impact comes actually from the value chain, most typically still from the supply chain, so from the upstream part. So it's really about lacking this comprehensive data that companies are struggling with. Second point, it's a lot about having the data collected for the annual reporting cycle. So we really don't see the data updating often because it's such a huge work gaining that insight along the value chain. So it's very much about getting the data once a year for the annual reporting purposes, but really then throughout the year, it's the struggle of not seeing that where we are going. How can we steer the ship if we have, no timely data to work with? And the third one, sort of very much relevant to both of these, is sort of business relevancy. As Corrado also mentioned, that there needs to be a source data that you sort of cannot dispute that what is the source data, where do these estimates come from? And that's why we are looking into connecting into the financial data, because that has been the building block for companies already decades. So we really want to, although I do as a sustainability consultant, of course, I appreciate the scopes 1, 2, 3, and the sort of characteristics of those, as it helps comparing companies, industries between each other. But still, for businesses to really make an impact, having impactful actions, those might not be the best cases to start reporting to top management. So really focusing on creating that business impact, talking with the language that your colleagues in various departments understand. So that's where we that's what we've seen in the market, and that's why we've started to look for ways that we as tech, as AI experts, that what we could be providing on top of the data that we are currently processing with our clients. And this is sort of in a nutshell. I will go through next how we do this actually and what does it look like. But this is in a nutshell that how you can really use AI to give you those comprehensive, timely business insights. So we've named this our product as CarbonFox, but I would really love to talk about the general approach more than just the CarbonFox product. So more about our approach and the sort of the idea and use case of AI. But what CarbonFox does is that it estimates the carbon footprint of the companies or whatever organization it is directly from the data. And it is the financial data that we are currently connecting to. And sort of three things that are important here and what are the value adding benefits of using this approach is one, we connect to the existing systems. So actually it's all about already existing systems, already existing data. So you are not burdened with the need of gathering some further data, but we can actually take advantage of what you already have in place. We do the connections and we put the data flowing automatically. So you don't need to focus on collecting the data, but you can focus on understanding and developing action on top of it. So it's the automating of the data flow. Second, as we are connected directly into the financial systems, we can do it in real time. So we can continuously keep on providing the information and help taking action and understanding the impact of that action. Thirdly, and what I sort of feel that is starting to gain more and more traction and importance is, also the topic of this webinar is demystifying. So for Snowfox as an AI company, it's very important for us that, we are not, the AI is not a black box, but we want it to be transparent, traceable, that you really, it's important for us as an AI company to really be transparent in what we do. Second, for our clients, of course, we are working on top of their data. It is really important for them that they understand that what is happening, what does the data mean. So the transparency is really important for our clients. And thirdly, and not least, there's various, data assurance providers, verifications that require data and transparency thereof. We actually have now already first cases where our clients have been providing for assurance providers data through CarbonFox. And actually we got a really positive feedback on that approach, that we were really able to provide sort of even financial audit level data transparency on climate data. That is really a huge thing. But hey, I'll go through next how we work with CarbonFox. So what really happens there? And then I'll show you just a demo quickly that what does it mean that you have access to real-time data. I will go this quite on a high level. Please do use the questions bar or tab if you have any questions, so we can focus on the details in the Q&A. So this will be along 6 steps. So I will take them one by one. But basically, how does the approach of building the carbon footprint on top of the purchase invoices start? Is that we connect into the systems and we take the purchase invoice data, the invoices and the related posting data. So really basic financial stuff. In order to arrive at carbon footprint, we need to combine this data with relevant emission factor databases. Typically, what we currently use are spend-based emission factor databases because of their comprehensiveness and due to the fact that if you think of the source data, what is sort of the unifying factor if you think of any company, any industry, there's not too many things that are common in these. The processes vary, the products vary, the supply chain varies. What stays the same is the purchase invoice. So that is really the only scalable source of data, no matter what the company, no matter what the industry. And there in the purchase invoice, the shared common factor is actually the amount spent. So what we do is we teach the AI. We teach the AI on a global level, meaning we have one model. So it helps whenever we improve it, it improves for all of our clients. So we help the AI understand what was bought and from where. Simple as that. Then the AI uses all the data it can get from the purchase invoices to start doing and estimating from new upcoming invoices that what was bought and from where. And using this knowledge, it can then combine with the relevant emission factors and arrive at an invoice, even actually at an invoice row specific emission detail. So you can have various things in one invoice and the AI still detects that what was bought and from where. So we continuously do the calculations, we continuously provide the carbon footprint. Of course, we need to give feedback to the AI. So we need to validate the emissions. Coming back to, what's the sort of the value that we are bringing working together, Snowfox and Paya. It's all about a journey, as Corrado referred to. It's a journey of building the capabilities. So we need to validate the emissions, but what the beauty really is that the AI just keeps on learning from the data. It doesn't only learn from when we teach and say that, hey, by the way, this is not correct, but the beauty is that it also learns when we say that, hey, we actually have now better quality data, whether it's new emission factor databases, or it could be also at some point even direct supplier provided data. So it just keeps on learning. And of course, what happens here, it's the AI process. What we really want to be able to provide you is actionable insights, data that you can work upon. Now, I will be showing, I have snapshots, but I'm hoping that actually the next video will work. I asked my colleague to play around in the dashboard. So I will start a video, and please, others on the line, please give a thumbs up if you see that the video is rolling on your screens. So we have now the dashboard here, so you can see is it rolling?
No, Hanna, it's not.
Okay. Well, then let's fall back into the snapshots to save time. Sorry about that. We can be providing it hopefully later for you. So here are snapshots from the dashboard. So it's all about providing those insights as we are connected into the financial data. So you can see we are not only talking about the high level emissions and the spend thereof, but we are really able to drill down into the supplier level. We are able to actually drill down into single invoice row level even to validate what the data is all about. We are able to, show those emission hotspots on maps. We are able to use actually your sourcing categories to make it more impactful within your organization, to talk about where your, the biggest emission impacts are. So we are able to speak in your sourcing language there. As said, we are connected on a continuous data flow, so we are not limiting ourselves into the yearly or annual views. We can be looking at the data from a quarterly point of view, from a monthly point of view, even on a weekly basis if you wish to. The data continues as the invoices flow in. So we are building these kinds of views constantly with our clients. Now with the case that Corrado was referring to, we have, for instance, set here that you could be seeing that if you want to compensate your emissions in the first place before taking any further action that Kevin is going to be talking about next. So you could be seeing that what does it mean in financial terms if you were to compensate those emissions that you have. On the views, we are sort of focusing on the business relevant data. Having said that, we of course want to also provide the data in keeping in mind the external reporting requirements. So we have views along the greenhouse gas protocol, along the scopes division that they require, talking about the different categories under scope 3. So we are providing also those details, but there too, keeping in mind that you can really drill into the data. You are not limited into saying that, okay, our scope 3 business travel was this and this, but you can really click down and drill down and see that actually it originated from flights, from hotels, from train travel, this and this much. So even with the smallest detail, you can look back into the invoices. At this point, I'd like to give the floor to Kevin to elaborate more on how to develop strategies on top of this data that we are building together with AI and more traditional methods. So next to you, Kevin, now.
Sure. Thanks, Hanna. I'd like to preface this section by saying that so as a consultancy, as Paya, we do have to talk to a lot of companies and a lot of potential clients. And there are a lot of things that we see that are a bit not as developed when it comes to sustainability strategy. And one of the first things we usually ask companies is, well, do you know your value chain? Do you know what is in your company and what are the emission hotspots, or at least where do you source your items? And what is like a general value chain of either your company or even other companies in your same industry. It's usually kind of a black box, and it's usually like, oh no, we just source some products, but we're not sure of how this relates to GHG emissions. We know that some products, like perhaps palm oil, something that's maybe a high manufacturing, these would be very high in GHG emissions, but there's also no way to contact them unless you have numbers, unless you have some sort of proof that, okay, we know that you're a high emitting factory. Well, how do we get that down? The good thing about the GHG protocol, actually, the next slide, Hannah, please. Yeah, the GHG protocol, scope 3 in particular, gives us a roadmap on how a company could map out their value chain. So if we think of scope 1 and 2 as the consumption of fuel and combustion and refrigerants, and also with scope 2, the consumption of electricity indirectly, the entire value chain, upstream and downstream, is captured by these categories. If you're familiar at all with life cycle assessment, you may find that it can be a bit scattered how GHG protocol thinks of where do you get certain emissions from, like category 1, for example, purchased goods and services. This is all the life cycle from the cradle to gate. And without going into too much technical detail, you can see that maybe if you look at category 5, well, the waste from some purchased goods, whether it be from that same year, that same reporting period, or a different year, is captured in category 5. So it's kind of a very chopped up way of looking at life cycle emissions. But other than that, this was a very nice way to separate what is upstream and what is downstream of your own company's business activities. These factors kind of give you a blueprint of where emissions could lie and have lied in maybe your peer companies. But Hannah, next slide, please. These are the categories that Hannah and Corrado have been talking about, that these are very auditable categories. These are the things that are linked to a financial statement and cannot be disputed. So categories 1, 2, 4, 6, and 9 are the categories that CarbonFox covers, and these would be used by purchase invoices from the company. Everything that is captured in purchase goods and services, capital goods, upstream transportation would be captured in the company's books, their enterprise resourcing platform, their ledger sheets. These would all be captured. And as Hannah mentioned, all of these purchases are linked by a dollar amount or a currency amount. And the good thing about this is in GHG protocol, they specify many different kinds of ways to calculate GHG emissions. So in this case, we would be using spend-based emissions to really baseline a company's scope 3 emissions and baseline a company's value chain emissions. At this point, you may have some questions about the veracity and the accuracy of scope 3, but we're of the mindset that it's been studied by the GHG protocol and this is allowed. So this is some baseline calculations that can be done for any company, and then we can figure out as your consultants together how you can improve the data for next year so you can get more reasonable insights so you can apply it to a more robust greenhouse gas reduction strategy. On the next slide, please. So how to leverage technology. Technology, as you know, we've been talking about purchase invoices quite a bit. Just an example of one right here. Hannah, you could go through all the animations. And the next, yeah. Okay, so an invoice has the product purchased, the quantity or unit quantity of product, the cost of product, date of purchase, and location of merchant. So I've been doing myself a GHG inventories for the past 4 years, and you really have to think about what is the source of this data. Usually, if you're looking at maybe fuel consumption, it's probably from the purchase history of fuel. If you purchase from a fuel retailer, you would have an invoice that has the liters of fuel that you've purchased, or like from a petrol station to fill up your car's tank. These are all captured in the invoices. So we have the product purchase, the quantity or unit of the product, the cost of product, the date of purchase, and location of merchant. So this would mean that emissions can be calculated by really 2 main ways: the product specific emission factor, so the CO2 equivalent per product. In the case of like of petrol or diesel, it would be CO2 per liters, or the spend-based emission factor, or CO2e per like Singapore dollar or euro. These both are allowed in the GHG protocol, but this invoice is how we can leverage both the company's auditable data and take that to into a greenhouse gas inventory that can stand audits, that can stand tests, because this is non-disputable. At the same time, because these invoices are already in the planning software of the company or some ledger, these can be bulk exported and can be thrown into something like an AI or to another consultant, but perhaps an AI is a bit more efficient, that you can take out these insights by extracting things on the center box, the product purchase quantity unit. These are all things that are embedded in the invoice, and we can use to create your strategy. So when we talk about baselining, this is what we would recommend to any company, is that if you have no idea where to start in value chain emissions, like what suppliers to contact, we would first recommend you choose spend-based emissions and then see, okay, where are my hotspots? In the dashboard that Hannah just showed, these are very good tools that a company can use to say, okay, supplier A is a big emitter based on our spend and based on the spend-based method. So this is just all of these things that we have in our toolbox that is a GHG protocol permitted to enable carbon reduction within your company. Next slide, Hannah. So we'll share these slides later, but the carbon mitigation hierarchy is really the backbone of all carbon strategy. And once you have the insights, this is where we would take the insights, and this is where we would use those insights to be something more tangible and more relevant to your company. So at the top, we have the avoid activities that cause emissions. And then we cascade down to reduce, substitute, sequester, and offset, which offset being quite a lucrative thing now with the carbon markets and carbon credits. But it would be the least favorite option, while the most favorite option would be to avoid. So if avoiding something could be the first line of defense to decarbonizing your company and making the transition to a low carbon economy more feasible for the organization, then the invoices and the scope 3 emissions would definitely help you where to target. So next slide, Hannah. Here are just some avoidance examples. We have mostly from the maritime industry and from the transport and logistics. So we can have some avoidance examples like Europe ditching Russia gas could price out emerging Asia buyers for renewables. If gas is something that is non-replaceable in your company, but we find out through purchase history and through procurement choices that it could reduce your emissions, that's something that we can target. This is in the middle is some news from Singapore: registration of new diesel cars and taxis to end in 2025. Just some regulatory things that we have to keep note of when we craft your strategy, and some other hydrogen, maybe some hydrogen replacing of different fuels. And if you're a first mover, if you are using some sort of AI technology to really get your scope 3 emissions, this is such a good way to look at it, because you have the emissions and you have the hotspots. How can you reduce this down by looking at where your purchasing lies and then reduce your emissions? Next slide, Hannah. And these are just also some reduction examples, energy efficient initiatives that lead to low cost and savings. Like I said, this could be not just in your company, but through the companies that you've targeted as hotspots. So this just opens up the conversation around the carbon mitigation strategy of not only your company, but also your suppliers. Next slide, Hannah. And some substitution examples. As we've mentioned, when you have these insights, you can choose to substitute certain products to be more low carbon, whether it be like solar, anything that replaces fossil fuels, but also it could be a more carbon friendly or low carbon supplier of the same product. usually we wouldn't want to completely shut out a supplier in terms of replacing or making a low carbon switch. As Corrado had mentioned, it's more of a journey that, okay, we've identified you through scope 3 spend-based emissions. Well, then how can we improve this data? Is the data even accurate in the first place to your emissions that you've reported or that you've yet to report and yet to measure? It's more of a conversation starter to how strategy can work, but it is a good baseline. Next slide, Hannah, please. And finally, compensating examples. So carbon credits can be used as direct sequestration efforts, and unfortunately, it should be used very sparingly, and because and really as a last resort, because we don't want companies to really buy their way out of reducing their carbon. Yeah, so whenever we have these carbon credits and the pricing of carbon credits, we can also look back to, okay, how much have we saved by limiting some certain part of our process or some certain supplier or some certain purchase that we've made? Can we make it low carbon, and what are the financial impacts of the company? While the offsets could also pose some sort of cost or even a benefit in terms of entering carbon markets and what kind of sequestration efforts could be done and that have been done within my peers. Yeah, so some of these is very interesting to think about, but it also, we need to craft this from our company, and we can only do this with insights from the value chain. Next slide, Hannah. Okay, so before we get into the consultant sharing and speaking more about the retailing case in Southeast Asia, we want to pose a question to the audience. What does it mean combining AI technologies and climate expertise? So if CarbonFox has the AI capabilities and as Pi as a consultancy, how can we marry those together and create a strategy, or at least a GHG inventory for companies that may not know where to start? Next slide, Hannah. So with this retailing example, they have extensive amounts of scope 3. Just to call back to the list of scope 3 categories, specifically 1, 2, 4, 6, and 9. These are purchased goods and capital goods. And if we're thinking about a retailer, there are so many goods that come in and out of the store, whether it be non-trade goods or trade items that hang out that are sold to customers, or they may be like the racks, the shelves, the equipment that is used to sell the items. This retailer in particular has invoices that exceeded 200,000 per year, and all data points are in their ERP or in their system, and there is also a money attached to it, like a cost attached to it. So this is where CarbonFox comes in deploying this system, where we take a data dump of the historical data, whether it be 2021 or even a real-time implementation of the data of CarbonFox. We can look at the data and say, what is the high spend, and where is the supplier located, and how much did you spend on it, and what is the item itself? The AI can look at this data and say, for all these 200,000 invoices, can output GHG emissions based on the spend-based emission factor. If you asked any consultant to do it that way, it would be quite the task. The status quo would have actually been to ask the supply for scope 1 and scope 2 data, but then it poses the following questions. Are the numbers disclosed by the supplier accurate? Has the data been audited? And how to identify priority suppliers to target decarbonization requests or efforts like the carbon mitigation hierarchy? Well, the picture below kind of shows, well, it's a chicken and an egg scenario. How are you going to screen your suppliers without doing any of the legwork of how are you going to screen who to contact? Well, the spend-based method really helps you in identifying the hotspots. Just the two benefits that we just want to share from working with this retailer is there is a lot of data, and perhaps a retailer could be on the most extreme ends, because there are only some companies that buy a few packets of paper, staplers every year, maybe professional services that have quite a low amount of purchases a year. But someone like a retailer is really the heart of commerce, and they have all these invoices that are just being used for their annual audits. But these can be repurposed and found, and at least some insights can be translated into greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm quite grateful that there is a tool like this, and GHG protocol allows this to happen. Because if we're just thinking about at the beginning of many company sustainability journey, they have omitted scope 3. They have not even chosen to touch it. They've only focused on scope 1 and 2 because it's the most, it's the easiest to implement in terms of getting a consultant or getting an in-house staff to calculate diesel emission factors. Scope 3 is a lot more complicated, and we're seeing a lot of software, a lot of strategies, but really baselining it and improving the data year on year is a strategy that we can recommend, and something that we've been deploying with our own clients here in Singapore. So that concludes my consultant sharing. I think I'll throw it back to Corrado to moderate the Q&A.
Thank you both. So we have a question, and Hanna, I will pose a question to you. It's basically what will be the emission factor databases that the CarbonFox is using? And I think then after you reply, I will also pose a question to Kevin, as we are looking at emission factors in a different part of the world than Finland and Europe. Hanna first.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Corrado, and thank you for the question. Really good question. I thought that would come up as I didn't touch that on the presentation. So actually, for now, we are starting with an emission factor database called ExioBase. So you can just Google it down. We've selected it for many reasons. One, it being publicly available, so the transparency brings in credibility. It's backed by European universities, research centers. You can look it up, but really the key points are that it's very comprehensive spend-based emission factor database, in that it covers some 200 industries, 200 products, 50 countries or geographical regions. So it's very good in comprehensivity in terms of products and geographies. Having said that, we are looking into different emission factor databases as well. We have been looking one in the Finnish context. We have been looking one in the US context. Now with PAIA, we are looking at more like Southeast Asia context. So it's all about getting relevant data in for the AI to work with. But the ExioBase is for now, and what Kevin referred to as the cradle to gate emissions. So that is really the essence of those emission factors. So they bring in a comprehensive view of the value chain emissions.
Thanks,
hope that helped. Yep.
And Kevin, I was fascinated when you mentioned this client we're working with together with the Snowfox, 200,000 invoices per year. I imagine those 200 invoices are in different currencies for different suppliers. So how do we go about the conversion factors in that case?
Yes, so the database that Hanna mentioned, ExioBase, has been around quite a while. It is open source, so it's available for anyone to view. But this database has been studied based on a country's GDP and input-output tables plus life cycle emissions. So when that was created, it was created at a certain year. And when we're talking about GHG emissions for a company and their reporting year, we have to clean the data, make it a bit more quality for it to play nice with the existing emission factors. It's really the same story as if you had an emission factor for diesel, where the diesel was a certain density. IPCC takes care of this. These emission factors for spend-based were made for a certain year and for a certain currency, which happens to be the euro. So if we're talking about a company, let's say the Singapore dollar, it needs to be converted in the same fashion where it would be equivalent when that database was created. So the cost today of the Singapore dollar needs to be needs to be something about exchange rate and bringing it back to the euro calculation that the emission factor was based off of. There has been many questions on the veracity of using money, because currency fluctuations will happen, inflation will happen. There could be like a sale perhaps, that maybe your company has a favorable price from a supplier. Does that mean you have less emissions? Well, using XCO base and using spend base, it might turn out that way, but it is only the first step in your accuracy building and your capacity building within your company to get a better emission factor year on year. So I like how Hannah mentioned that they're looking at other databases, because if you use one, okay, that's fine, but there can be improved databases with emission factors. IPCC is the one that we use for activity-based data, activity-based emission factors. So if we're looking at diesel, we're looking at maybe even kilometers of the car that you drive. But for spend-based and purchases, we find that it's very useful to use spend-based until we can improve the data quality of the tier 1 suppliers for a company. Thanks, Corrado, and thanks, Hannah.
Yeah, thank you both. Mindful of time, any other questions, comments from the audience? Feel free to bring in the chat. Otherwise, one question to Hannah and Kevin from me. What's next? I think we all understand that this is actually about credibility. We need to get started. Understanding how we can actually demystify the value chain by really get AI to help us making sense of financial data that are not disputable, in line with the greenhouse gas protocol, allowing us to use spend base for certain categories. What's next, Hannah? What do you see if we should have this webinar in 3 months? What will be the sharing be about? And then the same question to Kevin.
Oh, a really nice question, Corrado. I think that we could really look into the opportunities of using those insights gained from data. So what we at Snowfox encourage our clients to do is that when they are looking into these kind of new approaches, as with AI, always to test. Ask for credibility in the data, ask for views with your own data. So I would really love us to have a more in-depth view probably from looking at from sourcing point of view, also from finance point of view, that how you can drill down and how you can benefit from these insights. From a sustainability point of view, I would be happy to discuss taking the next steps in enhancing the data, because that's an area where we just only shortly now covered, but there's tons of issues that the AI and even the spend-based method actually supports people with. Sorry, Corrado, that wasn't clear. We need to have one every third month. Yeah.
Kevin, then over to you, now that you are on the ground working with this concrete case and deploying technology to help you, actually helping this client coming up with science-based targets on scope 3. What do you see will happen next in the journey of deploying AI?
Yeah, Kevin, will you take that?
Sure, yeah. I think that being very intimate with the data will cause some feedback to be given to the client. We're telling them, okay, thank you for letting us use this data. Now if we're trying to make this easier for next year and maybe even more accurate for next year, we will like to see some things happen in terms of the streamlining of data collection, and also how are we gonna improve the data quality? How are we gonna get even more scope 3 categories on board with this new found data hygiene, data management system that we are implementing with the company. Sustainability data is growing every day, and there's a lot to be had with business intelligence on sustainability data. So what I would like to see actually, maybe this is being implemented already, are invoices being a bit more transparent about things where they were sourced, and actually a big issue for one of the invoices for this retailing client was that they didn't have a line item for transportation, but transportation was built into the price of the product. So there's no way to get category 4, which is transportation upstream, which would apply to these purchase products. So if the quality of invoices and everything shifting from PDF invoices to log down into an ERP, that would be fantastic for auditing purposes, for GHG calculation purposes, and for overall data management within the company itself. So hopefully on the data side, that could be much improved at every company. Maybe every company could have a primer on data management. But on the sustainability front, it's very exciting because now we have many different players and many different creative ways to decarbonize based on the insights that CarbonFox, that Paya can bring to the table.
Thank you, Kevin. Hanna, back to you to conclude.
Perfect. I think that we are now on time to finish with the webinar. I'd like to thank all the participants from asking those questions. Hopefully we got some good ideas, thinking going on, and actually we are sending out a feedback survey right after this webinar on what you would like to hear more, what would you like to understand more, who from your colleagues would you like to invite to discuss these or hear about these topics, as we are, of course, as sustainability experts, many of us here, we want to be talking with multiple people and functions, not only within the sustainability, but really within the procurement departments, within the finance, within the IR departments, you know, getting everybody on board, company strategy, business strategy. So really looking forward to questions, comments, feedback on that survey as well. And hopefully next time we'll have a properly functioning demo set also for the dashboard to drill down, and maybe we can even give you access to it so you can play within it. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, also from the Paya side, thank you so much. This is really the start of this journey to really enable insights, actionable insight and hotspot by deploying technology. So thank you so much for taking your time. A very good afternoon if you are based in Singapore in Southeast Asia. Very good morning for our Finnish Nordic colleagues. Looking forward to hear from you and get your feedback. So thank you, Hanna, thank you, Kevin, thank you, Ville-Veikko.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.